Broadcasting live from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review is proud to showcase Monte Carlo in the Solution Spotlight, a unique online event for industry professionals.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Monte Carlo and focused on providing practical tips for driving results with generative AI. While GenAI has its fair share of hype, data leaders are being tasked by executives with investing in AI across the business. So today, we're going to sit in on a fireside chat between Sandra Morris, Head of Customer Success EMEA at Monte Carlo, and Phan, the SVP of Product at Salesforce AI, who is focused on ensuring that generative AI is driving real impact for customers. Na is going to share how she's seen companies unlock the potential of ML, AI, and other cutting-edge technologies to help their internal and external customers. Let's go to that conversation now, and after, I'll have a follow-on Q&A session with Biswaroop Palit, Head of Products at Monte Carlo.
So nice to be here. It's my pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you for giving me the time, and thank you for giving me the space to share with you some of the tips and some of the things that I've learned along the way with generative AI.
Well, to kick us off, how did you first get involved with generative AI at Salesforce?
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I actually started with Salesforce in Service Cloud, which is one of the largest business unit and product area of Salesforce, focusing on customer service. And there I was leading the core service, which is a lot about the agent console, the agent experience, knowledge management, self-service, things like that. And within that capacity, I started to look into all of the things that generative AI can help customers to improve on customer service. And kind of through that work, I get closer to generative AI. And then most recently had an opportunity to go over to the Salesforce AI group, which is a more centralized AI group within Salesforce, to lead the service AI practice.
Fantastic. Well, using AI in customer-facing products is not a novel concept. In your opinion, why is there so much hype around generative AI, and what makes it so different?
Yeah, customer service is an area where we all know that it is very strategic to a company's ability to drive top-line growth through customer satisfaction, experience, loyalty, right? But at the same time, the customer expectations of what kind of services and how they receive services from companies have actually changed a lot in the last couple of years. Customers really expect it to be when they need it, how they need it, right? Get service on their own terms. And a lot of the times they don't want to have to pick up the phone and call somebody. And so it has been very difficult for companies to meet the rising needs of the end customers. And I do think that generative AI is actually a way for the companies to meet this rising needs at scale, so that it's not like you have to pour in a lot of costs, right, in order to deliver the personalized, the target type of service anytime an end customer would want to receive it at a very high cost. I think that generative AI allows you to do all of that, but at a more cost efficient manner.
Okay. Well, how should teams think about identifying tangible use cases for generative AI at their companies, particularly in that customer service function?
I think that there are two broad areas in terms of customer service that generative AI can play a very big role in. One is the end customer facing type of, I would just say, chatbot, So that's kind of one area. The other is the agent assistance or agent productivity tools. Those are the two broad areas. And then underneath each, I think that there are, different ways to think about how to get started. So for example, for the chatbot, you can certainly get started with areas where you know that you have many routine, repeated type of questions that many customers have. You have a very good source of knowledge articles in order to address those questions. And perhaps up until today, it's just been hard to build a very, human-like chatbot that would be able to identify the intent of the end customer very accurately in order to, extract the right knowledge for that particular question. So that's one area that, generative AI can help with quite a bit. And then on the other side of the agent assistance and agent productivity tools, you can think about all of the manual tasks that the agent have to do today. So, for example, at the end of a case or at the end of a conversation, they have to spend a lot of time to gather the artifacts of what they have done for the resolution. They have to write a summary. At times, they have to put that into a knowledge article. All of those things take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And you could use generative AI to really help with those areas.
Okay. So what industry will get the earliest benefits then from generative AI, in your opinion?
I actually believe that generative AI can benefit all of the industries out there. I think that no matter what kind of business you're in, there are inevitably a list of customer inquiries and customer requests that are very routine, that are very common, and you wanted to be able to address those in a very conversational manner, so human-like, targeted, personalized, yet you don't need to have always have a human behind those inquiries.
Okay. Are there some examples of tangible use cases you've seen adopted by customers or other organizations that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from a customer, let's say customer chatbot standpoint, I think that with generative AI, it's actually quite easy to start up what I would call a knowledge bot. So, this is a chatbot that would mind all of your knowledge articles that perhaps you already have made available on your website so that the end customers can engage with the bots as if the end customer was talking with an agent, right? And the question could be, what is your return policy? I have bought, my order 60 days ago. Do you think that I can still return it? So those kind of questions easily be answered by the knowledge bot. And there are many different kinds of questions depending on what you are in. I think on the agent assistant side, having the generative AI tool to help you summarize a particular case at the end is very helpful. And the summary would, detail out what is the customer issue, what was the resolution, are there any next steps that still need to be done. And in the case that there's not a knowledge article for that particular resolution, and the agent has gone through all of the work to generate the resolution for that particular case, the agent could also, with a push of a button, generate the knowledge and push that knowledge article for the approval process. So those are some, kind of immediate low-hanging fruit type of use cases, but there are a lot more, right? Like, for example, you could ask the generative AI, and let's just say a co-pilot. It's a very common term now used in the industry. And an agent could say, I don't see any knowledge articles for this particular case or this particular customer issue. Would you help look at all of the closed cases for something similar and help me summarize a resolution that has been done in the past for these cases, for example? Like, that could be something that generative AI could help an agent with, right? And the same thing goes with the end customer. The end customer should be able to ask the chatbot something like, I have a gold tier service. I have gold tier member service. And given this, if I need to transfer, money internationally, what would the fees be? And the bot might say, since you are a gold tier member, your fee would be waived, right? So increasingly, you should leverage generative AI to help both the end customers and the agents to automate more of the increasingly complex issues.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I suppose then if we switch, what are the key considerations that IT teams need to make when they first embark on their Gen AI journeys?
Yeah. So when any company starts embark on the Gen AI journey, or even just for any AI journey, I think the number one thing that you need to make sure that you have is a high quality set of knowledge data. You want to make sure that the LLM has something to ground its answers on. You know, you don't want the LLM to use its general knowledge, which may not be accurate for your particular company. And you wanted to make sure that you point the LLM to a set of high quality knowledge data that you have within your enterprise. So I think that would be step number one. But maybe even going before that step, it's just to understand the type of use cases that you would like to address with generative AI. And it can start from the more mundane, repetitive type of tasks that your agents need to do, or any persona in your company for that matter. And maybe start there first. And you can kind of then see out of all of these use cases, where do we have a good coverage in terms of knowledge versus where we don't have a good coverage for in terms of knowledge. And I think where you would want it to start first is where you have a good knowledge, good coverage of knowledge.
And pivoting then, I suppose, to Salesforce, how are you structured in order to accelerate the adoption of Gen AI in your own operations?
Yeah, so we have two threads. One is to leverage generative AI tools in all of the things that we do internally. So that's one track. The other track is that we wanted to ensure that all of our products are now considered number one AI product. So let's say it's number one AI sales cloud, number one AI service cloud. So that's the goal, right? Yeah. And then in order to achieve that goal, we have organized ourselves into a centralized Salesforce AI organization. And the reason for that centralization is to make sure that we have pulled in all of the resources in the most efficient way, right? To make sure that we move fast, yet eliminate any chance of duplication. And we also make sure that we have one consistent platform that not only our customers can leverage, but our internal teams can leverage, and all of our applications can leverage as well. So that's kind of how we organize.
You mentioned to me beforehand that you have a Gen AI council. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's actually a kind of an internal group that is leading the effort to ensure everything that Salesforce does internally, from how we interact with customers via our sales team, to how we deliver customer support, to how the IT developers are working with coding, are all enabled by generative AI as much as possible. So this council is responsible for understanding the use cases and guide the different teams to the right set of solutions.
Mm-hmm. I'm already seeing some questions in the chat in relation to enabling and training, so we'll come to that towards the end. So you mentioned the LLMs. What's the role of data quality and integrity then when getting your LLMs ready for prime time?
Yeah, so I think when you think about the LLMs, there are two ways of kind of leveraging the LLMs. One is you leverage the general LLM, like GPT 3.5, GPT 4, and you would unlock what this general LLM can do through prompt engineering and grounding the general LLM in your enterprise-specific knowledge data, right? So that's kind of one way of doing it. And in the sense, and in that way, you need to make sure that you have the right customer data to construct the prompt to ask the LLM the right questions, the more nuanced questions, so that the answer would be very personalized for that particular end user that is asking the question. you also want to make sure that, as I mentioned before, the knowledge data that you are using to ground the general LLM in would be accurate, right? Would be fresh. So that's kind of, way number one to use the LLM. Way number two of using the LLM is that you may take a general model, be it, something from OpenAI like GPT-4, or be it an open source model like Llama 2. And you would then use your own data to fine tune that model for a specific task. And one specific task could be, given this customer inquiry and given the identified knowledge articles for this particular inquiry, help me generate an email response to that customer, right? That could be a very specific task that you use your own data, the way that the email responses have been written in the past and all of that, to ground this particular general model in how to perform this specific task. So those are kind of like two ways of using LLM. And way number two also requires that the data that you use to fine tune that particular general model has to be also high quality, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally understand. Okay. So when we think about product teams wanting to leverage GenAI for their tech solutions, how would they go about it?
I think, first of all, is to understand what are the customer needs, right? Like, I think you, as a product team, we should always start with the customer needs, whether or not, your existing solution today can help solve those needs efficiently in a high value manner for the customer. And if not, what would be the role of generative AI in helping to solve those top priority customer needs? And then start from there, start from kind of understanding the use cases and understanding the potential of generative AI to solve those needs in a very high value, high impact, cost efficient manner. So once you have the use case, right, then you think about, okay, what kind of data would you need? How would the customer interact with a solution, which then required for you to build the solution in a certain way? Like, for example, do they want to have the solution in the flow of that persona? So, for example, for a service agent, do you want the solution to be right where they are doing their work? Or do you want it to be in a co-pilot sort of conversational experience where they would pop up this box and start typing in their question and then have something pop up? If it is something that is also that experience of conversational, but like, does it have to be reactive or does it have to be proactive? So you kind of need to think through, how the customer would actually consume such a solution, right? And then decide how you want to go about designing and working on that particular feature.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the biggest open challenges then with Gen AI?
I think that the biggest challenges are like what I would call, and what many people would call, more of the last mile problem. So we know that LLMs and generative AI are very powerful, but when you take the LLM and put it in customer facing use cases, you want it to be very accurate. You want it to be very secure and compliant, right? You want the experience to be good. So it has to be performant as well from a latency standpoint. And I think that really getting it right on all of those dimensions are still very, very hard today. And then for a lot of the customers, leveraging the most powerful LLM like GPT-4 Turbo could still be very cost, inhibitive. So figuring out the cost side of LLM is something that is still challenging for many, many customers and companies.
Okay. Any other ones out there that you can think of?
In terms of challenges?
Yeah.
Well, data is a huge problem to generative AI. Like, as I have been mentioning, having high quality data having consistent data, having a way to kind of continuously manage the data that are feeding the LLM, right? It is probably the first biggest challenge, and you need to solve that to even start the generative AI journey.
Okay. We're coming towards the end. Some rapid fire questions. Then that's not very Gen AI, but maybe it gives us a bit more insight into you. What's your latest Netflix binge now?
Well,
maybe
yeah. So not the latest, but I definitely have my moments of binging. I'm a huge fan of fantasy in general. So a series like The Witcher or Shadow and Bone are some of my favorites.
Okay. Karaoke song?
No karaoke song. I like to watch people sing, right, and have fun, but karaoke is not my forte.
Okay, and final question from me before we switch to the Q&A: cats or dogs?
Dogs, 1,000%, yes.
Okay, I'm kind of with you with that. So my apologies to all the cat loving people out there, but yeah, dogs all the way. Okay, well now I'm going to go to the Q&A now and touch on some of these questions. Paul asked right at the very beginning about the tips for ROI with AI. How can they be quickly implemented, and which require more foundational work in advance before implementing?
So let me try to understand, get the question right. So this is the tips to get to the ROI of generative AI faster. Is that right? Yeah.
And what require more foundational work in advance before actually pushing live?
Yeah, so I actually think that there's a lot of things that can be done with the general LLM, and you just need to make sure that you have the right prompt and the right knowledge to ground. And so identifying the areas where you already have all of the foundational pieces, like the data, is definitely some place that you can get started on. And I think it's just a matter of writing the right prompt to help the LLM to get you the output. Just make sure that you understand what is the before in terms of business metrics, and what is the after in terms of the business metrics that you could directly tie to the use of generative AI. So, for example, for service, some of the metrics that we look at is quality of the conversation, average handle time, time to resolution. Things like that would be some of the business metrics that we would measure the before and the after.
Okay, fantastic. I know you touched it earlier when you were chatting through the story, but Lynn has asked what skills and training are essential for individuals or teams that are looking to work within GenAI, and how would they work effectively with GenAI?
Yeah, so I think probably skill number one is to understand the potential limitation of LLM, so that you, as sort of what we call human in the loop, can quickly identify, that could potentially not accurate in terms of the result that you get from the LLM. So those are kind of for the average user. And then I think, for the IT folks, prompt writing, prompt engineering, which is another word for it, is something that people can get started on, and just play around with the prompt and the generated reply to see what adjustments you need to make. I think that the word engineering sounds very scary, and it make it sound like you need to have some sort of engineering skills to write prompts, but that's not it at all. It really is just like how you give instruction to something. For example, you can say something like, take a deep breath, work step by step. Even just saying that, actually will help the LLM take step by step in resolving that particular question that you have. Or, saying something like, do not make answers up unless you find a knowledge article that help answer this particular question. Something like that could also help with eliminating the hallucination. So I think prompt writing is a really key skill to have.
And kind of following up from that, the question from Paul was, from the AI perspective, how critical or not critical is it to implement NLP to analyze customer interactions and identify patterns in customer sentiment and feedback?
I think that generative AI can be really, really good to use to analyze the conversations that have happened in the past to get to insights. It could also do it in real time as well. Like, for example, if you need to identify the sentiment of the customer for that ongoing conversation, generative AI can do that too. Did I answer the question, or are there aspects of it that
I think so? And I know we're coming up on time as well, so it's such a fascinating area for every single one of us. Now I'm so grateful that you've shared your experience with us today, and allowed us to get a little bit of insight and more knowledge in the area. It's definitely a huge hot topic for every single one of us in data as well. So thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's always helpful to learn from leaders such as yourself who are out there working on these priority projects. And we're so grateful you could join us.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, everybody. And I would just leave you with this one last saying, which is, generative AI is only as good as the data that you give it.
That was well said. I want to thank you very much for that fine conversation, both Sandra and Na. I think a lot was covered. And so what I want to do now is bring in Biswaroop Palit, Head of Products at Monte Carlo, for a little Q&A. Biswaroop, thanks for being with us.
Thanks a lot for having me. Very excited.
Well, so this is a huge topic, and it's one that we're covering in every direction across the entire spectrum of enterprise technology, and it might be as important as any question since, I would say, the internet, any development since the internet. But I always love to hear what builders have to say about this thing. So I'm curious what your take is. I mean, what approaches are you seeing enterprise take with regard to generative AI?
Yeah, fantastic question, Doug. Separating the hype from what we are actually seeing with our customers, and how enterprises are adopting generative AI, it does actually meaningfully enable enterprise teams to unlock value out of unstructured data in ways that was not possible before. And so, the conversational interaction with this model, it actually unlocks so many interesting use cases, some of which you heard Na refer to in the Salesforce context. It's just mind-blowing. And the one common theme that you observe is that generative AI, the models that these enterprises are using, they need to be trained or somehow fed context of the enterprise specific data that to give meaningful responses. So business applications, they will need deep knowledge of the enterprise, its customers, its products, the interaction with customers, and their state of happiness with the product in general. Those kind of things need to be fed into these models to make meaningful business applications for these enterprises. And last but not the least, the enterprise applications need to be secure, scalable, and trusted.
Yeah, that's great. Good overall perspective. And honestly, one of the most interesting things that we get to see is how generative AI really is impacting individual solution providers and ultimately what you're building. I'm curious what you see the role of data observability in LLM development.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was talking about earlier, you need to take these models and provide them context about the enterprise specific data to build successful business apps that are meaningful for this enterprise, either internal use cases or to their end customers. And so we have found that there are essentially two ways to give this additional context to the LLM models. The first one is called RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, where you basically take the enterprise specific data set and you put that in a database, oftentimes a vector database. And so when there is a prompt or a query that comes in, that prompt is first fed into the vector database, and you retrieve this additional information from the database, and then you feed the prompt and this additional embedding from the vector database into the model. And this way you can add context to the model that it had not been earlier trained on, and addresses the problem of hallucinations that are very, very common with these models. The other approach towards providing enterprise specific data is fine tuning, right? Like, so where you take a labeled data set that is fed into the model, and you essentially train the model all over again to embed this knowledge into the model. And now it's aware of the information that wasn't in the model earlier. So these are the two high level approaches that we are seeing about uh, training the model with enterprise specific context. Now, if you think about both, right, like there is either the vector database that you are populating with enterprise specific data, or you have this labeled data set that is being fed into the model. Both of those essentially are data pipelines. So you're taking the unstructured data, you're somehow cleaning it, transforming it, and making it available to the model either as a database or as training data. And the reliability and the trust in this data that is being fed into the model is very, very important, because bad data will lead to bad results. And the results, if they are not good, like the enterprise application will basically lose trust with its desired customers. And that so and just bringing the last sentence together. So as you can see, the data needs to be extremely reliable for the end result to from the model to be trustworthy. Because unless that model is trustworthy, your enterprise application that you're building out won't yield the desired results. And hence, building out this data pipeline and having fundamental trust and reliability on it is extremely crucial, even in this world of generative AI.
Yeah, this is interesting to me because I'm curious, as a follow-on to that, what should teams prioritize when thinking about improving the reliability of those large language models?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so as we talked about, right, like one way of thinking about it is just as a data pipeline. The data needs to be extracted, cleaned, and transformed into embeddings or vectors, and then loaded into your vector database or into the training data set. Right. And so this is just an extension of a standard enterprise data pipeline, and it should be observed as like you would for any other data pipeline. And like all of the concepts about observability ring true. Just as a couple of examples, like freshness, which is how frequently or on time is your data loaded, just translates to, is it being loaded onto the vector database at the right time? Similarly, volume is like, if you are expecting a certain amount of rows to be loaded or certain amount of data to be loaded, is that what you got in this latest batch that you loaded onto the vector database? So with this, like actually working with our customers, we recently announced Pinecone observability, which will basically help you get a lot of observability information on Pinecone, which we have found to be a very popular vector database that customers are using in leveraging RAG to train their generative AI models.
Interesting. So why don't we finish up with a little prediction time? I'm curious how GenAI will change data engineering. That would be the prediction. And then actually we'll do the inverse of a prediction and ask the same question, but how won't GenAI change data engineering? I'm curious to get both perspectives.
the most significant change will be the number of people who will now have access to data. Until now within enterprises, it has been fairly restricted to typically people who are very data proficient, either in SQL or Spark, etc. And they are the ones who can do meaningful things with the data and like try out different hypotheses, etc. Now, this makes these kind of analysis is open to a lot of people who don't need to be as data proficient. Even for the people who are proficient with, say, SQL, for them, the accelerating the process of getting to an insight will be possible by a lot of the generative AI applications that we are seeing. So in overall, the democratization of data across the enterprise is something real and will be a meaningful change that'll occur. The other thing I believe is, data teams have primarily focused on getting value out of structured data so far. With generative AI, getting value easily and effectively from unstructured data will become a very, very common pattern for most enterprises. Think about voice or video or text that they have in terms of like transcriptions of customer conversations, etc. A lot of that will become much more easy to leverage for enterprises. And then moving to the other question that you had about like what won't change, like we talked about how to train a LLM model with enterprise specific context, you are essentially building a data pipeline. And so, fundamentally the data engineers' jobs are going to be here. Like, in fact, it's going to be more important than it was earlier. And so, we don't need to worry about the data engineering function being eliminated by generative AI, right? Like that's one of the core worries we see thrown about various functions. The other aspect which won't change is, the typical enterprise requirements around trust and security, like ensuring proper access controls, privacy, scalability of the enterprise applications to be able to handle spikes in workload, etc. All of that will still be the same, and you'll continue to see those expectations from a business application, despite it being powered on the back end by generative AI.
Yeah, this is an amazing time to be alive. I think we are literally entering into a moment in time that will rival the PC revolution, the internet revolution. I mean, there's definitely going to be the AI revolution that we're going to live through over the next decade or two, and that will more than likely yield something new beyond that. But this has been great. I always love talking to technology builders about these sorts of things. I think you're right. There's going to be some easy things that generative AI can immediately have an impact on. But I don't think it's replacing humans anytime soon, and I think we still have a long way to go before we get rid of all of us and we just let the generative AI robots take over. So, Biz, thanks very much for the time today. This has been great. We look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Doug. It was a pleasure.
Well, there you have it. Another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank Monte Carlo and Salesforce for that conversation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.